The following podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed therein are solely those of the speakers. Additionally, due to the nature of the subject matter of this podcast, I do also want to warn you that there will be discussions of sexual assault, so listener discretion is advised. Well, since you are bent on this, I will not refuse to proclaim all that you still crave to know. First to you, Io, I will declare your much vexed wandering, and may you engrave it on the recording tablets of your mind. When you have crossed the stream that bounds the two continents, toward the flaming east, where the sun walks, crossing the surging sea, until you reach the Gorgonian plains of Sistine, where the daughters of Perseus dwell. Ancient maids, 3 in number, shaped like swans, possessing one eye amongst them and a single tooth. Neither does the sun with his beams look down upon them, nor ever the nightly moon. And near them are their winged sisters, the snake-haired Gorgons, loathed of mankind, whom no one of mortal shall look upon and still draw breath. Such is the peril I bid you to guard against. Welcome to A Niche Retelling, the podcast where we explore all the ways old tales are made new. This is going to be a smaller episode today. I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today is...
Shamila Karanakaran.
And this is a very special episode because we are going to be reviewing something that pretty much no one else has been able to read yet. We were very lucky to receive an advanced reader copy from NetGalley, highly recommended from my fellow bookworms out there for the record. And pretty much from the moment I had heard of this was what made me open up a NetGalley account because I was so excited about the premise of what we're going to be covering today. We are reviewing A Drop of Venom, Sanji Patel, and this is a Medusa retelling using Indian folklore, basically.
It definitely introduced aspects of Hindu mythology. It's a weird mix of a lot of things, but we'll get into that.
Yes. So, of course, as always, we must ask, Shamila, what is your history with the myth of Medusa?
Okay, so I was that weird kid who was really into Greek and Egyptian mythology.
Say it with me again. Of course you did. You're queer.
Yeah. So anyways, in 3rd grade, we would go to the public library in our neighborhood, and there was this whole exhibit about Greek mythology, and there were these eyewitness books, as well as short story compilations of... the myth of Perseus, obviously, and Medusa, and the Gorgons, and about Andromeda.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out. I did misspeak a little bit, I suppose. It really is more the myth of Perseus that Medusa just happens to feature in. Because I don't think that she really has a myth of her own other than her backstory.
Unfortunately.
Tragic.
So, anyways, I grew up with that myth, and I would see some animated retellings. So I think she appears in, the new Percy Jackson, Jessica Parker Kennedy plays her.
Yes.
And that is more accurate than any other portrayal of her, because Medusa was originally a North African goddess.
Yes, that is true. That is something I recently learned as well, because of course the mythology Tumblr girlies just are always there to provide that sort of information. And for the record, Medusa does appear in pretty much all versions of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I mean, I haven't seen the musical, but I imagine she would. But she was played by Uma Thurman in the movie that everybody hates. And poor Uma Thurman, she keeps on popping up in terrible movies, even though she's such a good actress. What the hell?
I know.
I guess she used up all her karma on Pulp Fiction.
So here's a little bit more information about the goddess that Medusa was originally based on. She originally represented 1/3 of the triple moon goddesses. In pre-dynastic Egypt, she was known as Neith, and in Libya, the triple moon goddess was called Anatha. So according to North African mythology, she wore a pouch around her waist that held live snakes, representing wisdom and renewal. The Gorgon mask that she wore was supposed to frighten off invaders uneducated in the ways of the area. She reportedly had gruesome glaring eyes, bared fang teeth, and, like the Hindu goddess Kali, a protruding tongue. the ancient Greek writers describe Medusa as being from Libya, but that was pretty much the ancient Greek term for North Africa. So that's all the way from the Strait of Gibraltar to what is now Western Egypt. So yeah, whitewashing has been happening since ancient times.
Caprice. and yeah, we probably should talk a little bit about Medusa's story. I mean, I feel like most of our listeners probably know the basics, but especially relevant to this particular story, the kind of the discrepancy in many retellings, at least on the Greek side of things. Because, of course, there is always the question of, well, there's actually two questions, I suppose you could say. Basically, was what happened with her and Poseidon consensual? Mm-hmm. And was Athena punishing her or trying to protect her? Because you see different versions of that. Because that's the beauty of myth. That's, again, the bread and butter of this podcast. The various interpretations of all these old stories. And ends up fueling this particular retelling to a great degree. And as for me, my first memory of knowing about Medusa was actually the Hercules animated series from Disney. Because, you know, that's for a lot of people baby's first Greek mythology. At least for the millennials. And I kind of think that this episode that she appeared in was the reason I have joked numerous times in the past that Medusa is my monster girlfriend, because they portray her as this very adorkable, awkward character who just wants to fit in, basically. And like Hercules plays the role of Perseus in one of the episodes, because of course. And there's actually this really cute joke that I specifically remember, that the mirror that Hercules has, you know, because that's how Perseus defeats Medusa. He uses a mirror so he doesn't have to look her directly in the eye. It says, monsters are closer than they appear. And see, Medusa was actually disguised as a normal girl, and she kind of quotes that as she turns into her Gorgon self. But, you know, it's the kids' cartoon version. They're obviously not going to delve into her very tragic backstory. I don't know if they ever really say if she was just born that way or not. That's another thing that people don't really talk about, is that she did have sisters. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've looked into that aspect. They always kind of looked like that, but she was the one who didn't until Athena either cursed her or tried to protect her, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it depends on, like, the ancient Greek writers, because there are a lot of interpretations.
Of course. Again, that's the nature of myth. And for the record, we at Any Retelling are not going to tell you which interpretation is correct when it comes to Greek myths. I know that was a point of contention with Lore Olympus. I don't fuck with that sort of thing. Take whatever interpretation you want, you guys. And if this is your religion, I do not say that in a disrespectful manner, but you know what? People are allowed to have interpretations of their religions as well. And that's my hot take. I think Medusa is just one of those figures that just kind of keeps popping up just because objectively it's a very cool character design when you think about it. Like, you've got all the snakes for the hair, and depending on which version, sometimes she has a snake tail, sometimes she just has feet. And of course, there's that one statue that is very satisfying for those of us who say Medusa did nothing wrong. And in fact, that statue was a major inspiration for this novel we're going to be talking about.
There's a lot of fan art reclaiming Medusa as a black woman by portraying the snakes as dreadlocks.
Yeah, no, which does make a certain amount of sense, yes. And yeah, no, like, the Tumblr girlies love Medusa. I think I have a whole tag full of just fan art of Medusa with various different interpretations of it. It's so great. Like, I know there's somebody who did a comic, I feel like there's multiple stories, actually, of her falling in love with someone who's blind.
Yeah.
Which, that would be nice. That would be nice. But, yeah, a drop of venom. So, I happened to just see this being advertised on Twitter, like, months back. I had actually thought that we were just not going to be getting the arc for it, but then all of a sudden I get the email back in December.
We both did.
We both did, yes, we both did. And basically, as soon as she said, it is a Medusa retelling using Indian folklore that is, we should just out and out say it, this is basically a rape revenge fantasy.
Yes.
And I was like, sign me the fuck up. Because again, Medusa is one of my favorite figures from Greek myth. So I was very excited to see this play out. And this does come from Rick Riordan Presents as well. I should mention that, speaking of Percy Jackson. For those of you who don't know, I guess because of his past attempts at providing good representation were always kind of hit or miss, he decided he was going to use his clout to help writers of color and of other marginalized identities kind of tell their own fantasy stories of a similar vein as Percy Jackson. Although I don't think any of the Percy Jackson's books get quite this dark. I wouldn't know. I haven't read any of them yet. If any Percy Jackson fans are laughing at me right now, that's fine. You will get your revenge when I finally cover whatever it is you're thinking about. And also, it should be noted that there is also a Perseus figure in this story, which does make sense, and they are love interests in this, which is really interesting because there was that one Tumblr post that was floating around pretty recently.
Yeah, so basically, Perseus goes up to Medusa saying, I'm sorry, the king wants me to kill you, and I have to save my mom from a forced marriage, and she says, did he say that he only wants my head? And then Percy rolls up with a big entourage, Medusa all covered, he says, here's her head, and then uncovers her and the rest of her.
Yep, which, that's a great premise, and so Patel does not say in the acknowledgments if that was an inspiration at all, but it is rather a coincidence.
Yeah.
A lot of people who do see Medusa as a victim, which I certainly do, but the post essentially points out, yeah, Perseus is being just as manipulated as she is. And that is, again, another premise in this novel. And again, that's why I am very sad to say, dear listeners, that at least in the form of this ARC, this did not work. And it breaks my heart.
This just needed to be 100 pages shorter because of all the unnecessary side quests that do not contribute to the plot or the characterization at all.
It's not even that they don't contribute. I see what she's trying to do here. We should do like the normal format. I want to say there are so many great ideas here, and there are moments here where you can see, oh no, this woman is a good writer. It's just, it kind of felt like I was reading a much earlier draft than what it must be for us to have received it a month prior.
Mm-hmm.
And unless there's some extensive editing that has happened since then, I am a little concerned. But we should delve into the plot, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
This book is about 400 pages, but I don't think it's going to take us very long to go through it, is the sad thing. Oh, and it should be noted, like, Medusa is basically reimagined as a naga, or is it Nagin? It's Nagin, right?
It's Nagin, because Naga and, like, Nagin are two separate creatures in mythology. Okay. I can get into that if you need to.
Please do, yeah, because I was not aware of that, actually.
Okay, so from what I've read, Manisha and her sisters seem to combine different aspects of Nagin and Naga. So Nagin are known as the Ichatari Nagin. They are shape-shifting cobras who have gained a human form after 100 years of penance. This is different from the Naga, which are a semi-divine race of half-human, half-serpent beings from the underworld, described as being able to assume 3 possible forms. Either as human, often with a halo of cobra hoods behind them, partially a human serpent, or as a whole serpent. So
now, see, that last part fits more into what I had known about. So when I opened the book and she didn't have a snake tail, I was a little confused. So that actually is very helpful. Thank you.
So some of the aspects of the Nagin that like play out into the story. So the Nagin are supposed to possess a jewel called the Nagmani, which is considered to be more valuable than any precious stone because it has the power to revive its owner. So legend tell of many people dying through snake bites when they try to steal it. Also, when a Nagin is killed, the image of their killer will be imprinted in their eyes. So their partner or their family will be able to identify the killers by that image and then take revenge.
There just seems to be a lot of different stories of just the eyes, like the last thing somebody who's killed sees being such an important thing. Like, even the Sandman series uses that with the Corinthian. So that's really interesting. It's like, again, one of those things that just kind of keeps on popping up in different myths. So basically we start when the main character Manisha is about 12 years old, and there is a war going on. Like, her people are being hunted down by the king's men, basically. Right away, I'm into this, because I think we've all been basically conditioned to love it when there's a badass teenage girl in a book. Like, the Hunger Games franchise pretty much runs on that. And basically her family decides that they're going to send her off to essentially be a priestess so she can stay safe from the battles going on, and hopefully eventually they can even team up to kind of take revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you had very strong opinions about a certain priestess. Sita will not see heaven.
She gave the original Sita a bad name.
That is so true. She does not deserve her namesake. You're right.
So I hated Sita immediately. Like, I don't care if you're threatened by Manisha's looks. You do not say that you are going to groom her and give her to the soldiers. You don't say that sort of thing to an 11-year-old. I guess it probably doesn't help that, like, the temple itself is, like, rife with political intrigue and then girls being pitted against each other, but still, stop perpetuating it.
Yeah, no, that's one thing I really did like about this book is that while misogyny and the patriarchy are very much recurring themes, that's pretty much all there is about this book. The book does not do the thing where it lets women off the hook for perpetuating it. Because there's a lot of quote-unquote girl power narratives where, no, the women never do anything wrong. It's like, no, women can absolutely buy into the patriarchy.
Yeah, Sita and a number of older women in this book do.
Yeah, how did you feel about that? How did you feel about the portrayal of older Indian women in this?
I feel like it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because if portrayed wrong, then it could absolutely portray into like, oh, the elder brown women, they are not really in touch with anything, they don't know anything, they're refusing to learn.
Right, yeah.
But on the other hand, it's probably, with the current education they have, they're sort of like trapped in that insular way.
Right.
It's probably the only way that they can protect their daughters and their other female relatives.
That's very fair. The thing about stereotypes is not that they can never be true. The problem comes when we just portray them as only the stereotype.
Yeah.
And as you said, like, this book is actually trying to do something with that.
Every, like, female character here is portrayed in different ways, and they're sort of, like, the sort of facets that are offsetting each other, and the way they interact with each other. It really builds, like, better sense of community and the range of people.
It doesn't let women off the hook. It does not just portray them as either we are sisters or we are enemies. There is something of a spectrum of it, because there are several women that Manisha interacts with that she wouldn't consider her sisters or her enemies. They're just kind of there. Like, there's an attempt to have a range of different female characters and different female relationships, and I will commend this book for that, absolutely. And then get to meet our male protagonist, Pratyush. He is the son of a monster hunter, basically. He is the son of a monster slayer, which basically we see a little bit of his family life before it is tragically taken away. These flashback scenes are really great, really heart-pounding, like maybe a little wordy, but otherwise really beautifully done. You can very much feel the pain of these two characters, and I love it when love stories do this, where they run like parallel flashbacks from before they even know each other. I really love it when love stories do that. And we see Pratyush kill his first monster, basically, out of rage over losing his parents to one of them. And unfortunately, he gets snatched up by the king and is basically groomed to only be a slayer.
Ugh.
He's not allowed to have any kind of life of his own or anything like that.
The king even outright said, that's your only purpose. If you can't kill, what use are you?
Yeah, it's like, wow. For all I say about complex female characterization in this, like, nope, the king has no complexity at all. He's just a dick. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need somebody who's just a dick. So yeah, you've got Pratyush trapped in this role. It's basically rife with toxic masculinity, like he's not allowed to have a life of his own of any kind. All he's doing is killing. And you got Manisha stuck in this role where she has to behave a very certain way, and she cannot reveal her true nature lest that gets her killed.
It does not help that Sita is, like, targeting her this entire time. And she's very much isolated, even within the temple. Like, the other girls are not close with her. Like, I think Arya is the one she has some sort of friendship with, but even she can't fully trust her, not to, like, report back to Sita.
Yep, if, God forbid, she steps a toe out of line or anything like that. So we've got a really good setup here, actually. We've got two characters with very tragic backstories who both feel trapped in their own ways. This is the stuff that a lot of great love stories are made of. It continues looking good because I believe he breaks a sacred jar because the
sacred lamp,
yeah, because slayers are very, very strong, and sometimes I guess he doesn't know his own strength because he is still pretty young at this point.
Yeah.
And she laughs, which would have been a big no-no, but he does not seem to mind.
Actually, I'm sort of amused by this. Like, Manisha is behind a screen. She's not allowed in the room because Sita has forbid her from coming in.
Yes.
And, like, when she sees him break this lamp and the soldiers patting him on the shoulder saying, this is why you can't have night things, she outright cackles.
I feel like you really connected with that moment because that's pretty much one of your catchphrases too. Like, yeah, that's really cute, and it's like a weird little connection that these two isolated characters have. So imagine both of our disappointments because basically every other time they've met after this, because, they do keep on kind of running into each other, and every single time we do the very trope that Sam hates so much.
The bicker kiss.
And here's the thing. I do not hate the bicker kiss. I'm actually a big fan of belligerent sexual tension. But you need to do it right. You had better be at least halfway towards Pride and Prejudice, okay? And this just wasn't it.
Yeah, also, Proteus, I know you have superhuman senses, but you don't tell a girl they smell different. Like, Manisha would have kicked you if she could.
I can almost excuse that, because again, he has not been socialized in a very long time. I can almost excuse that. But Manisha takes it as a compliment, and I'm just like, No girl likes that. At least not as far as I'm aware. I'm sure somebody out there is into that now that I think about it, but most of us are not.
The development just goes downhill from there. And because, unfortunately, there were some little cute moments, because we have these moments where Manisha is trying to wrangle a kid during a history lesson, and then Proteus was just roasting their IQs, and Manisha cannot stop laughing at that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if we kept to, like, those kind of sneaky little acts of rebellion with each other, this would have been so cute. Or if you had developed the belligerent sexual tension more, that would have also been fine. But it felt like Patel wanted to do both, and those are two tones that are very hard to juggle. Like, I'm sure someone out there can pull it off, but it does not work here. And also, considering how much of this book is about, hey, men have a real problem with boundaries, it's a little weird that you have your male protagonist, who we are supposed to root for, constantly kind of treading on Manisha's. Like, yes, the whole idea is Manisha doesn't really want to be telling him no. We know that. But how the fuck does he know? He doesn't.
Yeah, that's not cute. Stop pushing her boundaries.
The way she was telling him off just did not feel very organic to me.
No, if she was trying to get his attention off of her, because she would have been targeted by Sita and the other temple girls. Like, if it had played that angle, then maybe I would have believed it more.
Yeah, no, it just kind of felt like, oh, she's going to tell him no because that's what you're supposed to do in these kinds of stories.
No, but
there's nothing beneath it. And that's considering the fact that this is an environment where, yeah, she would absolutely get in trouble for that. But it just does not feel organic still somehow. Yeah. There's a lot of really good ideas in this story that somehow come out feeling flat in execution for some reason.
Yeah.
And additionally, it just kind of feels like it just goes on for so long, too. And yet somehow Proteus almost immediately asks for her hand in marriage, too, is the thing.
That's too fast.
It's like, no, the only way you can get away with that is you do an insta-love, which,
This is not an insta-love.
No. Again, I feel like she wanted to both do insta-love and belligerent sexual tension, and it's just like, I mean, you can do that. People have certainly pulled it off in the past, but that is a very hard
line to tread.
No, I would have believed it more if he would, ask to court her instead of the hand in marriage.
Yes. If he had asked to court her...
Take it slow.
Yes, absolutely. I guess what she was trying to do was, really ramp up the stakes just in time for everything to fall apart, but it's like, no...
It's too early in the story for that.
Or it's like, you have not developed this relationship enough to justify this.
Exactly. They probably should have made, Prakash made Manisha laugh and show off more of his clumsier side instead. If he was showing... They had shown him backing off when Manisha was showing resistance, it might have saved it a little bit.
Oh, it definitely would have saved it, because, he only backs off after she tells him multiple times, and it's just again, especially considering things he does later on, it really doesn't make sense unless you are trying to make a point here.
Yeah.
And if you are trying to make a point here, you did not address it enough. Because, later on, he flat out tortures a guy who was about to sexually assault a young girl in one of the villages he and his army were going through. Really just lays it on him for it. It does not match up. And you can absolutely make a point where guys will be out and out say, yeah, no, I would beat up a rapist, but not recognize their own shortcomings in terms of holding boundaries. But you didn't make a point of that, and you need to make a point of that if that's what you were trying to do. Considering all the anvils that are dropped in this story, it's weird to go subtle there if that's what you were intending, which I don't even know if that was it. Because I could see that working, but again, that is an anvil that needs to be dropped. It needs to be addressed addressed as a flaw in this character.
Considering all of that, and there is a point made about, like, men are not also the ones capable of sexual assault, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, again, I do appreciate the attempts at nuance here. Like, those aspects, I think, are some of the book's strengths. But, again, like, there's a contradiction in terms of Pratyusha's behavior. This is our male protagonist. We are supposed to want these two to get together, and I don't.
It's not working.
I don't want them to get together by the time they are parted, and tragedy strikes, because so Manisha does get assaulted by the general. And Sita set her up for it, too. Again, Sita will not be seeing heaven.
No, she, like,
or
throw
Nirvana,
her into a snake pit and set her on fire.
Yeah, basically. And, like, it is portrayed as brutal as it could possibly be, for sure. When this book is good, it is good. While you're reading it, you can tell which scene Patel was very sure about.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of them, which makes sense.
Like, Sita is clearly meant to be Athena here, especially with the way she slut-shamed and victim-blamed other temple girls. Like,
Yep, because as much as we like to girl bossify Athena, unfortunately there are definitely a lot of portrayals where it's like, she's not a girl's girl in the slightest.
No, in some cases she's like, I'm not like other girls.
She barely considers herself a woman. Like, I know there's some portrayals where she thinks she's better than women because she's not of woman born, which... It's like, she was my favorite goddess growing up, but my feelings have grown more complicated the more I learned about this and Arachne. Well, we'll get to Arachne eventually. But yeah, so Manisha gets assaulted, and you know what, we should mention, she does have that bracelet that you mentioned from the mix, and as it turns out, it basically gives her one of the best parts of the book, which is Noni. I love Noni so much. I love an animal sidekick.
Yes.
It should not surprise anybody.
Like, big golden snake, cuddly.
Yes, she's a big golden snake, and she loves cuddles, but she will also defend you with her life. She's great. We love Noni. And it's not quite telepathic, but they really do seem to understand each other almost on a telepathic level. Mm-hmm. Which is also great, because it does give Manisha somebody to kind of talk to while she's on her journey. After her attack, she kind of falls into a pit of snakes. This is basically a Batman Returns origin story.
Like Catwoman and Poison Ivy's backstories combined.
Yeah, basically, which, I mean, I'm down. And so now she's borderline invulnerable. Her saliva is venomous. And they kind of imply that her blood was always able to turn people into stone. Mm-hmm. That's just, like, part of what her people do. But I guess she didn't know.
Well, to be fair, like, her sisters and her mom kept a lot from her.
Right. They did kind of imply that. Remind me, did they ever imply why they kept so much from her?
It's not exactly implied, but in the epilogue, there might be a little bit of thing, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, the epilogue's wild, y'all.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Manisha goes on her journey, and basically, as a writer myself, the middle is always the hardest part, for sure. Mm-hmm. And it shows here.
So many side quests.
Basically keep on following Pratyush and the army defeating a whole bunch of monsters, which all were very cool. I will say, very cool monster concepts here.
Yeah, like, there were the bee women.
Yes. Very Candyman.
Yeah, they freak me out. Like, Candyman is terrifying, but the bee lady is a close second. But it's nothing compared to the giant spiders. Like, I nearly yeeted my phone across the room. This is how much of an arachnophobe I am. Like, if you lived in a spider-infested apartment where creepy crawlies like to crawl all over you when you were a toddler, you'd be traumatized too.
That's valid as hell. Yes, there's a lot of snakes and a lot of spiders here. Be forewarned. So, yeah, we're trigger warnings for rape, snakes, and spiders.
And that creature who basically did what ancient Egypt did with rape.
Yes, apparently this is kind of a Hindu vampire almost when I looked it up, because you know, every culture does have like kind of an ancestor of vampires, and I guess this is this part of the world's version. Yeah, basically like with their tongues, they'll
your nose
up your nose, fuck around with your brain. Basically, it's like, oh no, nope, you're not going to see these vampires getting romanticized. I'll tell you what.
Yay! Partial victory for that.
And unfortunately, with these fight scenes and just all the scenes with the army, this is where one of the other flaws of this book come in. There's a bit of a tone problem. There's a tiny bit of a tone problem, because one minute we'll be getting this really poetic and lush language, and the next minute it's a snarky comment.
It's just whiplash.
It does not blend well. There's a way to blend that sort of thing really well. There's a lot of books that I've read that managed to do that. I'm working through Gilded right now, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. If other people in the podcast read with me, we can maybe do an episode on that. what? But yeah, that's by Marissa Meyer. That also has a lot of lush, poetic language, but it also has some snark, but it blends better. And I don't feel like it blends here, partially because I don't think Sanjay Patel is very funny. Or at least not in this book. Her writing really isn't. Like, that's part of the thing, too. If you're gonna break up your lush, poetic language with snark, you gotta be funny. And it's mostly just, it's well that happened commentary, basically. Like,
but these scenes do give us Dev!
They do give us Dev. We do love Dev. All the Hannibal girlies out there, you're gonna love him.
The fact that he's a cannibal, but he doesn't eat the other soldiers because he doesn't want to catch their stupidity, it's hysterical. Like, I had to apologize to the people next door to me because I straight up Disney villain cackled at that part.
Yeah, no, Dev is great. Dev is pretty much Pratyush's best friend on this journey, and he's one of the dudes who's just like, yeah, this is kind of bullshit. We'll commiserate on how much bullshit this is. I just want to see my wife.
And we actually do get to meet his wife because, yeah, I was hoping that we would get to meet his wife when he mentioned her. And then,
Yes.
And then during Manisha's journey, we get to see Deepa.
What an unbelievable coincidence! That is another thing I will credit this book for. There's a lot of really interesting ideas for different types of people. There's a lot of interesting attempts at world building here. It's hit or miss on how good it is. I'd argue Dev and Deepa's are among the best, though, personally. Among the better ones, anyway.
Yeah.
Like, they're basically a warrior tribe, and yes, they are cannibals, but we don't really see them eat anybody here. Which, yay?
Like, you did have the idea, like, Dev was taking, like, advantage of the nasty rumors. Like, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, because, I was just like, okay, so are they actually cannibals, or is it just a bad rumor that he's just rolling with to scare people?
Especially with, like, the sharpened teeth. Like, the pointy sharpened teeth.
Yes, it's very Anabaria from Catching Fire. I did have fun with the fight scene, but it did kind of feel like it was spinning its wheels. And with Manisha, it was even more so, if you ask me.
Like, because we were promised, like, a rage fest, and it takes so long to get there. It's like a slow fuse.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you should be ready to murder somebody as soon as that happens. I realize, yes, in real life it could take a while for this sort of thing to process, but this is not real life.
Like, after she comes out of the snake pit, we could, like, attribute that to her being in shock, but after a while, it's like, the rage is simmering, and it's gonna explode at some point, so you might as well let it out.
She does not kill anybody until almost 3/4 of the way through the book. And that's
Which
only because...
is not a good sign in terms of development.
And again, I wouldn't mind so much if the lead-up wasn't so slow-paced. But it's just like she runs into this lady at the river and just kind of talks for a bit. Kumari, yes. Yes, Kumari basically explains what happened to her, which felt interesting. Like, I get that she was being brainwashed by the temple into some level of purity culture.
I did like that she was explaining, like, that's helping Manisha shift from thinking herself as defiled to thinking herself as violated. I think the language here was really important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that it was important to kind of change it, because, defiled makes it seem like it's somehow...
It's absolutely victim-blaming.
Yeah, it's victim-blaming, it's making it seem like you are less than for this having happened to you, shifting it to, no, someone did something wrong to you.
Like, I do think that scene was necessary, but the tone was a little bit off. Like, it should have been better written.
Yeah, like, it's not so much the same tone as, like, the attempts at humor, like in the fight scenes, but I guess part of the problem is it is so heavy-handed.
Yeah.
And not in an interesting way. You can do heavy-handed, but it needs to be interesting. I mean, this is a YA novel, it should be noted.
Yeah.
So yes, and I guess that's maybe part of why it is so heavy-handed. It's really trying to impart on the young adult, mostly girls who will be reading this, that no, this is what this is. Which, I guess you could make that argument. But I don't know. Like, there's just something off about it. Again, it just doesn't feel organic.
Because it immediately goes right into that, I think. Because, like, when Manisha tries to explain what happened, it's like immediately after she meets Kumari. Like, I feel like if a little bit of time had passed and then she eventually confided it to Kumari.
Maybe. Although, do we really need to extend this book anymore?
No, absolutely not.
And you know what? We'll give it this. Yeah, Kumari is like one of the few older women that are portrayed as good. So that's nice, at least. Okay. Because, like having an older female figure comfort her, I should have been all about that. But it just did not land. I did like her little water dragon buddy, though.
Yeah.
again,
And
I love an
then
animal
her
sidekick.
talking about the underwater city that she's from.
Yeah, like, are they trying to do an Atlantis? Is that what's happening? Or is
It
there,
might,
like, an Indian...
It might be, like, I feel like she might, like, appear in a sequel of sorts.
Yeah, because, spoiler alert, folks, it does look like she's setting up a series, possibly a trilogy. But yeah, and basically Manisha kind of walks around with Noni, encounters multiple villages.
And sees how these villages treat women.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there was this one... Okay, this one village where she meets Reina and Rani. Pair of sisters are there, and
Very
the village is really
misogynistic.
isolated and attacked. It's constantly under attack from other neighboring villages, and
The
they
girls are constantly kidnapped.
Yeah, they pretty much put the girls of the village on lockdown. They're not even like allowed to like go outside to the bathroom, even like when they're menstruating.
Yeah,
and yeah.
And this is one of those cases where we do see the older women kind of perpetuating the patriarchy and misogyny.
Yeah.
Because their mom is just... I kind of wanted to smack her.
And
Not
they
gonna
had
lie.
her, she had them drinking poison. Because, yeah, if something would happen, then they would have died instantly, or they would have taken someone out. But it's like that was the only option for them.
And just like, yikes. Like,
Yeah.
and just the level of victim blaming that she did. It's just, ugh. I know I did praise this book for not letting women off the hook for how they do this, but still, it's just...
It's a lot to read.
It's a lot to read. And then Rani got kidnapped, and Manisha and Reina go to rescue her, basically, and it's almost a complete failure because some of the boys from the village kind of fuck it up.
Including Reina's fiance, who,
They're basically willing to trade Manisha for Rani.
Even though Rania is like screaming at him and objecting.
Yep.
He does not listen to her at all.
Yep. Give Reina and Rani this. They are girls in spite of their environment. Good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Manisha almost gets violated again, but this time she basically comes into her power. Finally.
Yes.
Keep in mind, folks, this was like, again, this is 2/3, almost 3/4 of the way through the book. And I was just like, oh, finally.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's all I've been wanting. And
We get
listen,
the fireworks finally.
Yes, when are we going to get to the fireworks factory? And again, I wouldn't be thinking that if I was at least enjoying what we were doing, but again, there's just something about all of this that fell flat. But yeah, she uses her spits to kind of burn him, including
Yes.
his favorite appendage.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
There's a lot of like crotch attacks here, which I love.
Lots of crotch attacks. Which, yeah, go. Yes, excellent. Finally, a good for her moment. And this is where she discovers, yeah, her blood can turn men into stone. And that's when she becomes one of many YA female protagonist archers.
Yeah, and the chapter literally ends with, I am Venom.
Yep, it's cheesy, but that was fun. But yeah, again, we're finally picking up. And I am much happier with how, like, the last third of the book goes. But there are still definitely problems, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Because we are still doing the side quests. So many side quests.
And this is just like, yeah, and all these side quests are like preventing Manisha from getting back to her old village and finding the message her sisters left for her. Because I was so worried for the sisters, because we already have, like, Pratyush's sister Pritika being
Oh
fridged.
yeah, we haven't even gotten into her
Yeah.
yet. Pratyush's older sister, Pratika, she basically got sold to this guy, very abusive husband, and Pratyush really did want to save her, but was unable to. So yeah, it does kind of suck that she did indeed get fridged. And again, it really does drive home how little sense it makes that Pratyush would be crossing boundaries when he knows from experience what that leads to.
Especially since he actually witnessed it, because there was a passage there where he saw his sister being assaulted right in front of him.
Sure did. Was trying to get her out of it, but the king would not help, because he's the worst. And it should be noted, Pratyush even asks before he's sent off to hunt down the Noggin, which, spoiler alert, is, of course, Manisha. Yeah, we should also talk about the fact that, like, we switch back and forth from their points of view and switch back and forth through time, basically. And
It's really hard to tell when is when. Like, we don't
Even
really
with
know
the
how much
subtitles.
time they spent in the temple. We don't really know, like
we
how
kind
long
of
this
know
journey he is taking.
We do kind of know because we are told through the chapter breaks, but it's like, I feel like that's at least part of the pacing problems here.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if you didn't want to change what happened, the best thing to do would be to split it up. Like, we have Manisha's story, then we have Pratyusha's story, and then we have them coming back together, basically.
Yeah. Instead of, like, the back and forth, because it's so confusing to readers.
It's jarring.
Yeah.
And again, it really just adds to the feeling that this book is spinning its wheels until we get to the fireworks factory. But yeah, Manisha does keep on going. But yes, it should be noted that Pratyush requested that the king please just let him take some time off to maybe build a home for himself, find a girl. Because of course he does want to get with Manisha, of course, because he doesn't know what happened to her.
And then we find out that the king wants to breed Pratyush. He's having, like, all these girls trying to serve him.
Serve him, seduce him. Same difference, right?
Yeah, because he wants a new generation of slayers.
Yes. Because, there clearly are a lot of monsters here, but then again, ain't it always the question, who is the monster and who is the man?
And I do like that we have Dev pointing out that, like, no, absolutely not. That Pratyush could still be assaulted. Like, he could be, like, poisoned or, like, roofied. And then...
that is true, because when he finds that out, like, Dev does point out, it's like, no, if he wanted to, he could absolutely make sure you get assaulted, basically. And, which, again, kudos to this book for that. That's definitely a message that needs to be out more.
The king and the general are complete creeps.
Yeah.
Also, about the king, I cannot tell if he is fat or if he just has a beer gut, because the way that they describe him, like, he has, like, food all over his face, and his belly is, like, the same size as the queen who was pregnant.
That is true. I forgot about that. Ugh.
I don't know. Like, that's the only thing that's described that know about the king visually. Yeah, so I don't know if there's fat phobia going on there or if it's just a beer gut.
I mean, either way, it does feel a little fat phobic. It's like, oh yeah, the classic, let's portray the bad leader as fat to indicate his greed.
No, absolutely not. That is just, no.
It's rude. Like, it's 2024. We should know better. I don't care if it's the Ozempic era. But I honestly missed that in the midst of everything else.
No, that was the thing that stood out to me because I'm very food focused about here.
They do describe food a lot here.
Yeah, it, like, reminds me of my childhood of going to Little India and the Tamil neighborhoods in Toronto and all the food. Like, I'm Sri Lankan Tamil, so obviously it's very different from Indian culture, but there are a lot of through lines.
There's
with,
overlap.
Like, yeah.
It's like how there's overlap with Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Cuban cuisine. I getcha.
Yeah, so it's like seeing all of that, all the food and fashion, like everything that I was made to be ashamed of as a kid, anything that I was ever made fun of as a kid, like seeing this is like the importance of seeing yourself represented in media.
Absolutely, and that was the whole idea of Rick Riordan Presents as well, so they did good on that goal at least, so kudos to that. I'm really happy that at least made you feel seen there, especially with how people have treated you, because people are garbage.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that's another reason why I do feel really bad that this didn't quite land for me, because I really wanted this, I wanted to adore this.
And the prose is really good, like, when it's good, it's good.
When it's
like...
good, it rips your heart straight out of your chest.
Yeah. So, like, if this was animated, it would be, like, unending scroll work and, like, bold brushstrokes. It's like you're being pelted by powder during a holy festival.
But yeah, when the prose is good, it's really good. Rips your heart right out of your chest. Like, and it just makes the moments where she's trying to be, like, snarky action hero and not really succeeding even more jarring.
It needs to be more balanced. Like, if it was poetic snark, then maybe...
Yeah, like, almost like a Douglas Adams kind of thing. Like, a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah. Like, that's very much snarky prose. It's one of the best things about him, but...
Editor Jasmine here. I realized in retrospect, no, that wouldn't have worked given how serious this book is. Oh well.
And again, you don't have to be exactly like Douglas Adams or exactly like anybody, because, no two
just find what fits.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the part of the problem here. I think she was trying to have her cake and eat it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of appearances, fortunately there is no colorism because Manisha is described as having deep brown skin like sandalwood. But on the other hand, Manisha and Pratyush have green and purple eyes, respectively. I have extremely complicated feelings about that. It's like Avatar: The Last Airbender younger all over again. Like, I get
Yes.
that their eye colors denote their special abilities, that come with being a Naga and a Slayer, but it's the old protagonist never have brown eyes trope that made so many kids with brown eyes wish that their eyes weren't plain as boring as kids.
I was definitely one of those kids, and so I feel you there. I spent so much of my life wishing I had blonde or red hair and blue eyes, like,
Yeah.
and it's bullshit. It's such bullshit. I'm glad we've kind of, as a culture, have kind of moved away from that. We're starting to romanticize brown eyes, thank God, because we need to. Brown eyes are
I
pretty.
feel like we could have still had the green in some capacity. Like, Manisha
makes
could
sense
still
with the
have
snake.
brown eyes, but she could have green liner on. That would have made it stand out more.
That is an interesting idea. I wouldn't be against that, absolutely. Or, you know what? I would even accept, like, there's like a little circle of green in there or something. 'Cause
Yeah, you can have both in that case.
I will say, this is probably the first time I've heard of a super special boy with purple eyes. I was in the trenches of the Mary Sue's, guys. So, yay, progress, I guess. But one of the other side quests, because again, even though after she's come into her power, we're still doing side quests
Ugh.
at a very leisurely pace.
Which you do not want at this point in the novel.
Yeah, once she's come into her power, that's it. Just have her killing dudes, basically. And, like, she basically catches this young boy beating up a little girl and threatens him to make him stop. And to this village's credit, they do not put up with that shit. So, again, I do like all of the ideas of these communities. I definitely wanted to enjoy being with these communities more, because it really shows, like, the multiple facets and multiple ways misogyny can permeate even the most progressive of places.
Yeah, and
But
but we do get to see, like, on practices that they come to one of the villages, they ask to speak with the women, and they come out and their lips are so shut.
Body horror.
Yeah,
warning. Oh, God.
body horror. It's like, this is so straight from my childhood. Like, in high school, in one of the drama rooms, there was this poster of the handmaiden where her lips were shown shut. It just reminded me exactly of that.
It's that, but worse.
Yeah.
Is the thing. Because it's like maggots.
Yeah. When it goes hard, it goes hard.
This is definitely a YA novel, but the squeamish need not read this.
No.
Like, if you have a very sensitive teenage girl in your life, no.
Nope.
If there's like a hardcore alternate horror fan teenage girl in your life, she could probably read this.
Yeah.
Pratyush and his men are starting to catch up. There's whispers of Manisha's work. I think as soon as Manisha came into her power, we should not have seen her until maybe she reaches her village.
Yeah. That
Not
would have made
seen
it
her,
more
just-
suspenseful.
Just hear the whispers of all that she's done. And the women defending her, but the men being all, oh, terrifying, she murdered my brother. How dramatic the men were being about it was pretty fun, though.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, yes, of course, when a woman does it, it's terrible.
The general also on practices and was being absolutely holding them back, and like I think at one point like Dev sneaks off to his village to see his wife.
Yep.
Yeah, and we have like Pratyush covering for him.
Yes. Yeah, again, I do love Dev and Pratyush's friendship. They're great. They're
Gossiping about their love lives. We love to see it.
We don't see the women gossiping about it. It's the men who do it, and I do like that. I want to see more men gossiping about their love life.
And then we get the one of the little soldiers, Ras. Like,
yes.
they're like he's slowly like coming into their fold. Who's like when Dev says that he likes you, that's his stamp of approval.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's just a baby, and Pratyush is very fond of him. Really wants to protect him because it's just like I think he sees a little bit of himself in him.
Yeah,
he wants to protect him, and again, you do mostly see that sort of thing with women in these kinds of stories. So again, there's like definitely attempts at subverting
Stereotypes.
and I do respect this book for that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, one of the villages Manisha goes into, she runs into this girl who immediately pretty much considers her a friend, and Manisha has this whole internal monologue about how, wow, it's been so long since I've had a friend. And what I found odd was that she mentioned friends, but like she doesn't really mention anything specific. And I feel like if she had been more specific about a particular friendship, that would have hit a lot harder. There's a lot of tell not show in this book, particularly with Pratyush's and Manisha's relationship, because they keep on on saying, like, after they've parted, they keep on talking about how, oh, she was the only person who understood me. He was the only person I could be myself with.
She
Yeah, bitch, where? You. And the thing is, it reminds me so much of the Swan Princess movie of all things. Like, Shami and I, if you were familiar with any.
Oh, I've seen the gif set of like, oh, you're pretty, and then is that all you see me as?
Yes, yeah, that's a great moment, isn't it? Like, especially because basically it starts off with us seeing their entire childhood together, kind of butting heads, and then when they finally see each other post-puberty, they're like, wow, grew up nice. But then we get that scene, and it's really great. It's a nice subversion of the fairy tale cliches. But then, after they've parted, almost immediately after she gets kidnapped, they sing the big love ballad.
If I could break this spell, I'd run to him today, and somehow I know he's on his way to me. Derek, you and I were meant to be far longer than forever. I'll hold you in my heart. It's almost like you're here with me, although we're far apart.
It's like, I'm sorry, Odette, weren't you just saying you wanted to know for sure he loved you for you? Where is this coming from? It's very, very similar to that.
Yeah, like Pratyus's line about feeling like he can be himself around and shit. It's too out of the blue for that. Like, I guess
all she did was yell at you, dude.
If it was supposed to show like how he can put away his Slayer identity during his reactions, then I may have believed it a little bit more. But it's just like one-sided bickering on their part.
Exactly. Like he just keeps on flirting and pushing her boundaries, and she keeps on telling him off. It's like, no, you couldn't be yourselves with each other. Actually,
absolutely, he should have showed off his clumsy side. He should have made her laugh. I would have believed it more if they did that.
Because here's the thing, there were moments where it seemed like that's what she was trying to do, but it gets weighed down by the attempts at bicker kiss as well.
And we know how Sam feels about the bicker kiss.
We do know how Sam feels about it. I am neutral to it. If you do it right, you do it right. If you do it wrong, you do it wrong. And this
I'm of that same camp.
And this does it wrong.
No, like stick to one thing.
Yeah, because again, these are two things that are very hard to balance, and this book does not balance it well, unfortunately. But yeah, I believe then Manisha basically comes across her old village, her old home.
Yeah.
And it's basically in ruins. This was one of the best parts of the book, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you just feel the pain that she's going through.
And then, like, her memory superimposed onto the ruins.
I'm a sucker for those kinds of moments. I really am. Maybe it's Anastasia's fault, but I do love it when a character returns to a place from their past, and it's fallen so far from its former glory, but they can see all of the moments that they used to have here, and it's so good. Like, this is where it actually finally gets really, really good. Like, again, you can very much tell which scenes Patel was clearly very excited to write.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as a writer, I've had those moments. Like, when I get a new idea for a story, there are specific scenes that play in like a trailer in my head. I know exactly what I want to do with them.
Yes.
It's getting to them that's the problem.
Part. Or like connecting the scenes between them. That's the problem.
Exactly. And I do think that's part of the problem with this book. Like, the connective tissue is just not holding. And yes, of course, once she gets there is when the army finds her.
Oh, unfortunately. And she's trying to hide Noni because they're hunting down Noni at this point, and
yep, this is the moment in every horse girl movie where it's just like, go on, get! But of course Noni comes back, because of course they come back.
Yeah.
And Noni gets hurt, and it's very sad. She's okay. She will be okay, but...
yeah, and then Manisha just goes on a rampage.
Yes, because she thinks that Noni died because she fell off a cliff. There's something low-key Disney about that. I can't quite explain it, but there's something low-key Disney about it because she does turn out to be okay.
It's the Disney death of it all.
There's a lot of Disney death towards the end of this, actually, which I'm not against Disney death. Finally get Pratyush and Manisha meeting again.
Accusations flying of Pratyush's part.
Pratyush's and Manisha's, to be honest, because clearly they're both very much misunderstanding each other, which, again, in a better written love story would be devastating me.
But in this case, it was just annoying for me.
Kind of. It's just like, oh my god, you guys.
Not the time.
Yeah, just fight. And in fairness, the fight scene is pretty great. It's just the emotional aspect of it could be better.
Yeah.
I'll give Pratyush credit for immediately believing her, though.
Yes. And then Pratyush gets ambushed from behind, and Manisha gets kidnapped by guess who?
Fucking General.
Ugh.
And he's going borderline mad scientist on her.
Oh my god. This is why I said he had a god complex, because
I mean, yeah, he's Poseidon.
In his first scene, he's saying, I am a god.
He did indeed say that. It's just like, yeah, well, Miss Patel, you're really hammering in your influence here, huh?
Yep.
And I will say there was this one line where Pratyush in his head, it was like he was expecting like a creature with like snakes for hair and a tail, and I was just like, wow.
Actually, there was a point where I thought Manisha would get snakes for head because there was one point where she had a splitting headache, like her head was about to split open, and like I thought she was gonna sprout snakes for hair.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed they didn't go that route.
They did have the scars, like she has all the scars, like from her fall into the pit.
Yeah, and I don't mind that, but yeah, again, you know how I feel about Medusa. I've mentioned it, so I really did kind of miss the snakes for her. I think that would have been neat.
I think so, but given that like the snakes can represent dreadlocks, I don't think that would work on like Manisha because she is South Asian, she's not black. Like,
but in fairness, we've had many white girls playing Medusa too, so
that's true. It depends on like how the snakes are portrayed, I think.
That's valid. Like even in something like Monsters Inc., where the snakes are portrayed as having like a personality of their own.
Yeah,
I would have dug that. Give Noni some more friends. Maybe I'm being greedy, but like, and also it just kind of feels like it falls into the idea of the monster girl isn't allowed to look monstrous.
Yeah, it's like, you still look human. Like, where are the extra features? Where are the scales?
Thank you, yes! And it is so funny how I was reading this alongside the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
As far as YA protagonists with an affinity for snakes, I am sorry to say that Lucy Gray Baird is better written.
It's not a good sign for this.
I love the idea of Manisha, and there are, again, moments where I'm like, yes, hell yes. But, unfortunately, everything else is just
It just falls flat.
It really does.
When Manisha managed to get herself free, she's talking down to the general, saying like, I can't believe I was so afraid of you when you're like this. You're
Her
nothing...
trash talk is pretty great.
Yeah. And then she gets an arrow, she shoots at his crotch. Her blood manages to get contact because from his crotch he was like slowly turning into stone.
Yeah, that's the thing. With everyone else it happened pretty quickly, but with him it's just slowly happening.
It's torture.
Exactly what he deserves.
Exactly what he deserves. And then after, when Manisha tells Pratyush what happened, he punches the general in the face and he just shatters.
And it's great. It's so great. Again, I really wish we had seen more of this Pratyush in this story. Like, he is a wife guy. He will be a wife guy when they get married. And it'll be hilarious and great. Mm-hmm. But again, I wish I bought into their love story a little more.
Well, at least, like, it didn't, like, end with marriage. So I was worried that it would end like that, but no. They say they starting off as friends and like, let's get to know each other first.
And you know what? Thank God. We need more stuff like that because Manisha isn't even really sure how she feels about him.
Mm-hmm.
Except for when the Patel wants to say that she felt like she could really be herself with him. It's just like, pick a struggle, please.
Uh-huh. And yeah. Like Manisha, Pratyush, Dev, and Deepa. We forget.
Yes, that's true.
Dev knew about Manisha because when he snuck out to the village, Deepa told him about her.
Yep, and Dev kind of helped save the day, so that's great. Yeah. We love Dev and Deepa. They're great. Yeah. We love them.
Yeah, and Deepa's pregnant, so apparently she cannot join the fight, so they're having pretend like every soldier has been killed except for Pratyush, who vanishes. And so he joins Manisha and Noni on their journey to try to find her sisters. Yep. We do have this one scene where Pratyush looks at Noni and saying, is she gonna eat me?
I love Noni so much. Again, one minute she's so cuddly, and the next minute she's gonna choke a bitch.
Yeah.
Literally. And it's great. I want a Noni. It would terrify my mother, but I want one. Also, it's really funny, because I used to be deathly afraid of snakes, actually.
And I told you, I was a snake girl, because, like, whenever they would bring, like, reptiles, during class they would bring in, like, live reptiles, they would have us hold them. Like, I was the one with the boa constrictor around my neck.
I love that for you. I love that so much for you. But, yeah, and then we get to this epilogue. So, apparently Manisha's sisters are in the afterlife.
Or in the underworld. It's never really...
Yeah, it's kind of left ambiguous.
They could have, like, been... Because I did say that the Naga were residents of the underworld, so this could be that aspect being shown.
It could be. And apparently they've been watching the whole thing, so they're ready to give the spirit of the general no peace.
Yeah, Ashani just curb stomps him.
Yep, and therefore we get our sequel hook.
We forgot, the Dosi sisters, the three fates.
Yes, that's true. That we do have, like, kind of the three fate figures in one of the villages. They basically run run everything, which is part of why it's a lot less misogynistic than basically every other village we've seen in this story.
They are the ones who give that prophecy of...
Right, yes.
Of the three queens.
Yes, so Manisha is apparently going to be one of them.
And we already have Sitara wearing like a crown of glass.
Yes.
It's implied that her story might be a Hades and Persephone retelling.
Yeah, so basically the three queens, I guess we're meant to believe that it's the three sisters.
Yes.
Yes. And yeah, so what made you think it was a Hades and Persephone retelling, remind me?
It's because of her powers in the underworld, because...
True, okay.
Because she has power over the dead.
Yep, that is true. So it would make a certain sense. Meanwhile, Ashani's basically a druid for the D&D girlies listening.
Yes. Personally, I would have loved to see, like, Manisha and Practice rescuing Pratika by having Practice showing up with Manisha under the cover, and then everyone turns to stone.
So basically, much like how that one post ended.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty neat.
Yeah, because bridging female relatives has been done to death.
Yeah, and this book should have known better. You're not wrong.
Yeah. Or they could have thought, like, Precious could have thought she was dead, but she could have escaped. She could have almost died, but escaped.
I am a sucker for that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then she's, like, waiting in the wings, trying to, like, get better, get back into her power, and then find her brother again.
Yeah.
And maybe, because we do have this scene where Pratish's parents wondering whether Pratika inherited the Slayer's powers. I feel like there could have been something done with that.
I mean, since we do know this is going to be a series, maybe that's foreshadowing, actually. Maybe everything that you're hoping happens actually does happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rock with that. So yeah, a lot of really, really cool things in this book. I do want to really emphasize that.
It's just needs to be more cohesive.
Yeah. I feel like Patel had a lot of really interesting ideas and not enough time to develop them.
More effort should have been put into polishing it. It's like cutting a gemstone. The raw gemstone might be okay, but you'll never bring out like the best of it when it could be without the right editing.
And we do want to make it clear this is still like an unfinished copy of it. So for all we know, when the book comes out tomorrow, as of when this episode drops, maybe it's the pacing and the prose has improved substantially. If you end up reading this book, folks, please come back to us and let us know. Because I really do want this book to succeed. But for me, it ended up being kind of a slog to get through because of all those weaknesses, unfortunately. Shami will tell you, I was struggling.
I was struggling too. Like, it was like, is it supposed to be this long? Like, I kept looking through the page number to see where I was at, and there is that foreword with Rick Riordan and Sanjay Patel talking about, like, the statistics of sexual assault, which it is, they do bring that up. That is an important thing to bring up in the beginning.
Yeah, no, as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, we are super in for it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they do, like, make it clear from the get-go, no, this is what this is about. So if, for those of you who would shy away from this for any reason, it's totally understandable, and they make it very clear this is what we're going to be focusing on. Turn back while you still can if you want to. And in fairness, like, the scene itself is not, like, graphic per se.
It's not, like, exploitative. It's not, like...
You don't get the specifics of what is happening. You get the specifics of the feelings.
You get
which I think is the right move.
Mm-hmm. You get her terror. You get that focus on her clothes.
Yep. Ugh.
It doesn't make it any less horrifying.
It's conveyed exactly as horrifying as it needs to be.
Yes.
So again, I am not saying Patel is not talented. This just needs some polishing.
A lot of polishing.
A story like this deserves the very best.
Mm-hmm.
There's, again, really amazing concepts here. It has a really important message. And while it can get a little, as TV Tropes would put it, anvilicious, as TV Tropes also says, some anvils need to be dropped. And if there is one thing that the success of the Barbie movie has shown us, clearly we do really need the anvils dropped regarding how the patriarchy and misogyny hurts us all.
Mm-hmm. And if you're representing, like, the little brown kids who aren't really seen in media like this, you don't see yourself as the hero. You don't see yourself as the vanquisher. Mm-hmm. It's really important to have stories like this, but these stories need polishing. They need to have the best brat out in them.
This story absolutely deserves the best. The story's great. The writing just needs a little work.
What happened with Sita, I really hope she does not get away with what she did. I hope in the sequel she gets her comeuppance.
Yeah, the general got, but no, Sita needs to get got too.
Yes.
And hopefully, maybe in the sequels, Manisha and Pratyush's relationship gets better developed.
Exactly.
But frankly, this story needed to make me root for this a lot more.
Give more of the cute moments.
Or, again, if you're gonna do the bicker kiss, do it right.
Make us root for them next novel.
Yeah, because I really do feel like if we rooted for them, the side quests would not have felt so bad.
Yeah. I know in the sequel that it's going to be focusing on Ashani. So now I'm wondering what Greek myth her story is going to be. So, because there are not very many clues.
Yeah, no, because with Satara we do have some clues, but Ashani, it's because we know it's going to be Ashani's story next because of the acknowledgements. So that'll be interesting. Again, listeners, if you do end up following this series, which sure, definitely, again, the story is very good, and if our issues with the pacing and the prose don't bother you, please give it a try. But I'm curious to see where this goes in the future. And with that said, why does the myth of Perseus and Medusa, why do these myths endure?
Every bad thing that's ever happened to us, any sort of violation, or the 1,000 cuts that happen every day, the feeling that we can get to the point where we can have our vengeance, we can have our what we deserve, and for us to be respected for that choice.
Yeah, that's definitely why a lot of victims of sexual assault have definitely reclaimed Medusa. And, like, you hear all these stories about them getting, like, tattoos of her on them. You see all of these artworks that is like Medusa was a victim. And getting to less serious things, I mean, again, she's just a very solid monster. Like, people are, of course, afraid of snakes, and there is just something about someone who could look you in the eye and turn you to stone that is just so chilling, pardon the pun.
So, speaking of the sequel, I do hope that Manisha, develops more monster features.
Yeah, because
let her grow into the noggin that she is meant to be.
Yes, let monster girls look monstrous, dang it! But in the more traditional sense, you know, people love a hero vanquishing a monster, but
sometimes
these days,
who's the monster and who's the hero? It's not always easy to tell. And sometimes they're both the victims.
Yep, and that is a major theme in this story as well. It's just like, yeah, because Manisha is spoken as if she is a monster throughout her journey, and that's why the king sent his army against her. But who's really the monster here? It's blatantly the people who keep violating her.
Yes.
And other women, other people around her. It's the people in power who get to decide who a monster is, but oftentimes it's just to drive away attention from their own monstrous acts. Again, that sort of thing is really important, and that's, again, part of why I really, really hope that in its final form I enjoy this book more.
Fingers crossed.
Final thoughts? I know you said you wanted more Black Medusas.
Yes.
Jessica Parker Kennedy should not be the only one. Absolutely.
No, absolutely not. I would love to see an Ethiopian Medusa, because I think that would be interesting parallels with her and Andromeda, because people forget, Andromeda is Ethiopian.
Yep. I love the way Medusa's reclaiming by the general population, particularly women and femme-presenting people, has gone. And I hope to see more. I hope that stories like this get told even more, as we as a culture really do start grappling with how pervasive this blight on humanity that is sexual assault is, and we start taking it way more seriously and helping victims more.
Yes.
Alright, got anything to plug?
You can find me on Karuna on Tumblr. You can follow us on the Inich Retelling Tumblr.
Shabby's worked so hard, guys.
And we're also debuting little title cards with our podcast episodes, so be on the lookout for that.
Yes, I will also be attaching them to the Buzzsprout episodes as well, because I can do that.
Ooh. And my GoFundMe is still going on, so if you're able to donate, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, please help her, because I unfortunately cannot pay her yet. Follow us on Patreon so I can start paying her.
Additionally, in the spirit of the message of this book, I do recommend that if you are able to, consider donating your money and time to the Rape Crisis Center in your area. Believe it or not, you probably have one. They often provide really essential services for victims of sexual assault, such as advocacy, therapy, or even just education on how to take the next steps in surviving this. Because fortunately, even after something so horrible, you don't have to deal with it alone. And on a much lighter note, and you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok at Faye Riviera, and you can follow this podcast on Twitter and Tumblr at IER Podcast and inicretelling.tumblr.com. And if you'd like to help support us, please consider donating to our Patreon and to our Ko-Fi accounts, or even just pressing the support the show link in the show notes below. It really will help us reach the next chapter of our story. And even if you can't support us financially, even just sharing the links to the show, rating us on the podcast listening app of your choice, and leaving us a review still helps us out so much. Thank you very much for listening. Our semi-hiatus continues next week. The next full episode I plan to have released is The Green Knight, since the way I see it, this was supposed to be a December episode. We might as well try to get that out while it's still January. We hope you'll come and listen, and remember, stories gain power in each retelling. And the Gorgons who dwell beyond the glorious ocean, in the frontier land towards night, where are the clear-voiced Hesperides, Stheno, and Uriel, and Medusa, who suffered a woeful fate. She was mortal, but the two were undying and grew not old. With her lay the dark-haired one, in a soft meadow mid spring flowers. And when Perseus cut off her head, there sprang forth great Chrysaor, and the horse Pegasus, who was so called because he was born near the springs of ocean, and the other because he held a golden blade in his hands. Now Pegasus flew away and left the earth, the mother of flocks, and came to the deathless gods. And he dwells in the house of Zeus, and brings to wise Zeus the thunder and lightning.